Welcome to Tiny Gospel Radio Hour. This is your host, David Williams, and today I will be chatting with Steve Willis, a Presbyterian pastor and author who's done a lot of living in small churches and writing about small churches. So, Steve, it's a pleasure to be talking with you again.
David, wonderful to be with you again.
So, we've been chatting a little bit about various beach trips we've been doing and other things as we've been thinking moving towards our summers in our congregations. But you're currently serving Highbridge Presbyterian. So talk to me a little bit about the place where you're pastoring right now.
Sure. Highbridge Presbyterian Church is in Natural Bridge, Virginia, which is the southern tip of the Shenandoah Valley. And it's a little village of about 800 people. And the church will have 50 in the summertime on average, and then about 60 during the rest of the year. So small, classic small church. It was founded in 1770. So we had our 255th anniversary last year. The 250th was canceled because of the pandemic.
Pesky
And so,
pandemic.
oh, goodness gracious. Um, I think we're all still recovering from that and will be for some time to come. Um, It is historically, it's classic Scotch-Irish Presbyterian immigrant church of settlers who came in different parts of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Delaware, went across, moved west, hit the mountains, went south, and came down the valley. And so it is certainly a rural, small church and an Appalachian feel to it, for sure. Um, we've got multiple four-generation families, and at the same time, we get folks who move in and get adopted into a kind of different world than they experienced in their professional lives before they retired and moved to beautiful Rockbridge County. And so the area has kind of draw to it because Lexington is the city that's just 20 minutes north. Beautiful, small city. Um, Washington Lee University and VMI gather people from all over the place. And so it's an interesting mix. We've got a few folks who are still farming full time. There are lots of folks who farm as an avocation and are
Gentleman farmers, so to speak.
gentlemen farmers, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, and folks work in all kinds of different vocations. Beautiful place to be.
A lovely place to be. And you landed there how? What was the process by which you found yourself serving that community? And how long you been there?
Not been here long at all, 3 years. Um, we moved back to Virginia 17 years ago. And so my wife is an academic, and we were out in Eastern Washington State before we moved back to Virginia. And we wanted to get back. I wanted to get back to the mountains. My wife's from Tampa, and
Not known as mountainous country.
not mountainous country, no. And so I'm eighth generation Appalachian, and so it's hard for me to be away from mountains. And so um, my family's not too far away, and we wanted to get back here as we were having kids and as they were very young. And so um, I started serving as an interim pastor for sort of the second third of my career when we moved back here and did 9 interims, all in small churches, small town, rural, urban, downtown, um, all kinds of different contacts, but all small membership churches. And we live in Bedford, which is a little town just on the other side of the mountain from Natural Bridge. And we decided we were going to put down stakes here and not move again. We had enough of that when we were younger. Um,
Yeah, there are a few things more traumatic than picking up stakes and moving and picking up stakes and moving. My wife often tells me we've been in the same place now for just about 27 years, and that the family motto is we never move now.
Mm. Got a little Wendellberry going there. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're in our place and we're going to stick in our place.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the draw to small churches, was it initially something you intended to serve as you were doing interims, or did it just arise?
Well, I definitely chose small churches back 30 years ago out of seminary. I grew up in a small church and loved that. It's the little Presbyterian church. Um, and I I'm sure choosing to do interims for a while was as much related to how to be a dad and a husband as much as it was what kind of pastoral ministry I wanted to do. Gave me a lot of flexibility to be the primary parent when the kids were little. Um, but I also discovered at the same time, I'd been thinking about and writing about small churches, and there's not a place denominationally to serve and sort of share that experience, right? But doing interims was a place to do that and to sort of walk into each one of those settings and embrace them as who they were instead of saying, "Hey, you're doing it wrong because you're not big enough."
Here,
Um,
here are all the different things you need to do, and here are
right, right. Here's the
new
five steps.
protocols. Yeah, here are the
And if you
five
do these
steps.
five steps, you'll be awesome. And it's like, oh gosh. Um, and so, and I know I learned more doing those interims. There's something good about doing interim work that reminds you to take a modest view of yourself. Because you're constantly putting yourself out of work every year and a half. And and so I enjoyed doing that. But at the same time, I did want to finish up my last third of ministry in an installed setting. And,
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think I did interim training, and quickly determined that my family motto, the "I don't move," didn't mesh very well with the
yeah,
dynamics of interim training. There were great learnings there, but to have to spend all of your time as a wayfaring stranger in a community, where
sure.
you never, I mean, it takes 5 years is a good metric for how long it takes to really feel embedded in a community, to really understand it, understand the network of relations. And small churches are no different from that. And I think if you're looking to settle, if you're looking to feel grounded, um, a small church is beautiful, but you've got to spend time in that place.
Absolutely. And I certainly miss that kind of embeddedness in the congregation itself. I have a deep sense of belonging amidst this presbytery because so many of the folks are folks I was in seminary with back in the early 90s.
Mm,
And so we have this very strong community. And there's so many churches in this area because of the Scotch-Irish history.
yes.
And so it's not like I had to move to do an interim. Um, had to drive some,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, absolutely. What you're saying is very true. As an interim, the loveliness of being in a small church is being adopted by the small church, right? Being their pastor and then having that time period when they turn in and they go, okay, we can see you're really with us.
Right.
And as an interim, I, I didn't have the desire to fight churches about what they needed to do to get it right. So, but you're at the same time, you're not there long enough to get adopted.
Right. Right. You have chosen liminality as a vocation,
Absolutely.
and that is definitely a calling, but can be a difficult position,
Yeah.
especially if you come in expecting to be the change agent, because congregations don't change unless they trust you. And if you've got no skin in the game, I mean, I understand in the corporate consulting world, that's viewed as the optimal thing, but small churches in the corporate consulting world don't mesh well culturally.
No, no, they don't.
And so that is always a challenge. Um, so as you spent time in the small church, what was it that brought you to the place where you were, I really need to write a book about the dynamics of small churches and how we conceptualize them?
Two things. One was just how their stories are not heard outside of their communities. And and look, I'm a happy Presbyterian, long ties, the Presbyterian Church, but in the upper structure of our denomination, there's so little attention paid to these stories. And it's especially when I wrote it in 2012. And there was a moment there where we were starting to come to grips with the fact that we as mainline Protestants, however you want to describe it, were displaced, right? We weren't at the center of culture anymore, that we were on the margins of culture. And and I was looking around at these churches, especially rural small ones, and these folks have been out of the center of things for their entire existence. And they're still vital and they do these wonderful ministries. And it's like here's a story to pay attention to since our denominational place has changed. Um, and one of the biggest things of anybody working with small churches is realizing that the way that the American empire measures everything is by size and scale. And so, unfortunately, that trickles down sometimes to us as a church too. And and by telling these stories about being small and say, hey, there's a future, there's been a future for these churches since industrialization, and they still continue to do these ones. So telling that story was part of it. The other thing was I really wanted a book to be able to hand to to folks I was serving, and one that they could read and go, "Oh yeah, that's exactly right. That's belonging is the most important thing to us. The relationships are the most important thing to us." Um, and so that's been fun to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, having that as a tool, and as I've not said the title, it's imagining the small church celebrating a simpler path, which Steve wrote a while back. But it still speaks directly to that need that we have for belonging and place and a sense of genuine connection. Um, and you talk a lot about marginality and being peripheral. There's a Wendell Berry quote you draw out, as I recall.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, Small churches, I mean, they were not just peripheral, or I mean, it's sort of it's becoming a sort of a countercultural phenomenon. Um, and I wonder how much of that you've continued to encounter as you're in your church, and how much you develop that awareness. It's not just you're not on the margins, you're not irrelevant. To a certain extent, you represent something that stands discrete from the dominant culture. Does that surface itself in your ministry, and if so, how?
all the time. Absolutely. And um, look, the scriptural story throughout is a story about God working in these marginal places among marginal people who um, are struggling to relate to God amidst the pressures of empire. I mean, that's from Exodus, to Acts, right? There's that story. And so there's a sense in which God's sovereign over the world, even the empires. Um, but in order to display the kingdom of God, God elects these these out of the way places that are the crossroads, like ancient Israel between the great empires in Mesopotamia and Egypt to do something special and to be a blessing to the world, right? Not to create a little niche apart from the world, but to find a marginal place in which to bless the world through with a different vision of what the kingdom of God is. And there's such a great place to do it in these small churches. And it doesn't matter where you are, you can do that in an American suburb in a small congregation. Um, I have my own preferences in life. I love Appalachia because it is marginal to the American empire. Always has been. And so um, I um, I inherited that kind of love. And but again, the purpose is to be a blessing. It's not to be a pain in the neck to the world, but to have the freedom to choose faith and hope and love. Um,
Yeah, I think particularly in an era where we struggle with finding authentic person-to-person relationships, where there's so much more of a sense of like mutual isolation, and even our social exchanges are increasingly filtered through the power of corporations and the filters, and we see what we're meant to see rather than the person right next to us. I think intimate communities have a tremendous amount to offer on that front. There's a hunger there that they can feed that I think we often don't recognize. Easy to lose your way in that. And it's easy to, because we're smaller and not big and bright, and to miss those stories. So in telling that story to your congregation, how does that, how do they understand themselves, or how have the communities, do they see themselves in that position? Do they integrate a negative self-understanding? How do you move them away from that negative self-understanding?
yeah, the congregation I'm serving right now has a very positive self-image. That's not always true, right? If you're in a small church setting, sometimes you take on the dominant culture ethos and mourn that you're not doing as well as other people. Um, but I've not had to work on that sort of self-image. Um, and okay, for instance, you're getting at how do you do that in the church? So this summer, I'm doing the ancestral stories in Genesis.
Okay.
Um, and so this is church is very much shaped by family, right? And there's four generations like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph and
Right.
congregation, right? And so they identify with those generations. Um, and so talking about family and the importance of family that's to be a blessing to others. And also the ancestral stories are so great because the families are so messed up, right? And so there's such a great relief in knowing that the wonderful ancestral families were pretty dysfunctional, and yet God was able to work grace through that mess. And
Through
so
it
everybody
is
loves to laugh at that and go, oh, I'm okay. My family's dysfunctional too. And yet through these relationships, right, God does um, gracious things.
finds place of healing, finds a way that Jacob and Esau can finally embrace.
Yeah.
I've got we tend to break for the summer in my small church on adult ed, although I'd keep it going, but we're doing an extended series on um, mirrors of family, images of family dysfunction, and places of healing through scripture. And we're going to be spending a lot of time in the text you just described.
Nice, nice. That's great.
Yeah, because folks need a way to frame that, and understand the mess of intimacy is just something that's always been part of the human condition, and that doesn't mean that you're extrinsic from covenant. It is a blessing to go through it. Um, so are there other ministries that your church does now? Things musically, prayer life, mission work that you found it's organized around or found a passion for? What are your congregation's particular callings?
It's a mix of a number of different things. First and foremost, we know that these churches aren't primarily programmatic, um, but the way that folks tend to relate to each other um, are a mix of study, Bible study in particular.
Yep.
Um, we have, of course, the women's circles are continuing their long generational studies of Scripture. We have a young men's group that meets twice a month, and they've got me working through Paul with them. And so the Pauline epistles, which is certainly not my strong suit, I am much more on the storytelling end, but they are energized by that. So we've been doing that. So, and these are guys that are, I mean, spend a lot of time with each other. They're very good friends.
Yeah.
And so it's a wonderful mix of study, and then every so often we break to go to someone's house and just enjoy some beer and brats and or burgers, and there's an older group um, that meets to study scripture and to hear the stories. Um, that's really important for the church, and so it's great as a minister and preacher to call on those stories and try to help them hear those stories um, in relation to their place, right? And how God has this long history of using these out of the way places to bless the world. The other big focus is the local pantry, which our folks lead and help make happen. And that pantry just last month celebrated its 30th anniversary.
Wow.
And it's a big production. There's a lot of food. Natural Bridge is doing pretty well. Its neighbor, Glasgow, is is struggling. And so there are a lot of folks from both Glasgow, Natural Bridge area. And so there's a lot of need. Um, and the beauty of that mission is it is food for sure, and the food is needed, but it is also intensely relational. Anybody who walks small village community, anybody who walks through there is called by name. Folks know who folks are. And so there's an extended sense of belonging that goes out amidst that mission that is food, and food is very important, but it is also you are a person and we know you and you belong here. Um, and that has been wonderful to see and be a part of.
Are you seeing, or is that pantry seeing a significant increase in demand? Have there been shifts even in the time what time you've been at
I
Highbridge?
think I think it's sort of leveled out more recently. Um, I think they really started hitting bigger numbers about 6 years ago, and and so they got Food Line involved. I mean, there's 8 freezers. There's for meat and poultry, and so there's a lot of food that comes in and goes out, and it's needed. The pantries needed resources beyond that local community to meet it.
Has that been something folks have? Has it been easy to reach out and find those like exterior resources? Is it a how's that worked?
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things is one of the guys in our church who grew up in the area
Hmm.
and then grew up working class guy who was a phenomenal wrestler in high school, got a scholarship to go to college, or else he wouldn't have gone to college. And went into the Marines, was career Marine, taught at the University of Alaska for a few years after he retired from the Marines. Came home, and his calling in life is to help this run this pantry. And he's gathered all kinds of other folks with him, including these partners like Food Line. And he's had the smarts to be able to do that.
Yeah, it does take a very particular drive and a very particular calling. We have a smaller scale pantry at my congregation, and the folks who founded it are definitively called to that particular ministry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it is a uh, it is amazing how much passion and life that they put into it. Have you found, from an evangelical standpoint, that this, like having the pantry active, obviously it's been around for a while, but in a period of increased demand, that in a community where everyone knows each other, more people are drawn into the orbit of the life of the church through it? Or have you seen anything on that front?
Um, I don't think anybody's looked at it as sort of like a source for membership, right?
No.
But it's certainly relationally created. So we've done different things at the church and worship and recognizing the
Mm.
pantry. And so folks that aren't members at Highbridge would be there for that.
Yeah.
Um, and and there's also a Methodist church. There's also a very tiny, wonderful little Episcopal church that's involved. Um, and so folks see it as a shared outreach, and we're the bigger, I mean, we're not big, but we're the bigger of the churches of these little churches. And so we really watch out to make sure folks aren't feeling like we're trying to get them over to our place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so much that as spreading the awareness of that mission to feed the hungry. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it is, it definitely has, although you don't get scripture readings there at the pantry, you don't have anything overtly religious. It is a group of Christian folks
yeah,
and that are doing the work and that share the concerns of the pantry with their congregations, and folks there know and see that. And so it's seen as a Christian expression, even though it's not an overtly Christian pantry.
right, right. You're just feeding those who hunger, and
Absolutely.
that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah.
So, thinking more broadly about the dynamics of denominational life and small congregation, we've talked about Presbyterians and our struggle to come to terms with just how small we are. Where do you see the arc of small church life going in mainline or old line denominations? Is there a point we're going to wake up and realize that so many of us are small that maybe we need to pay attention to it? Or are we ever going to cross that threshold?
I remember when I was one of the persons who made my book possible, but if it wasn't for Tony Pappas, there had been no way that this book would have gotten taken up by the Audubon Institute. And if you've ever met Tony, he's from this Greek immigrant family. He's this big, bubbly guy, right? I'm from this quiet Scotch Irish family, right? And he's this outgoing, so optimistic guy. And we were having dinner, and I was all excited before the book came out. I thought this would give me a platform to speak to, friends who were, running seminaries and stuff like that. His face just darkened, and said, "Steve, don't even waste your time." And I didn't listen to him, but he was right. Um, I'm not speaking negatively against seminary. One of our best friends is president of our seminary that me and Amy graduated from, she's amazingly intelligent, lovely person. They're fighting to stay alive, right? Our seminaries are, and so they don't have time to think about churches in Appalachia. And so I don't know that our denominational leadership is going to sort of suddenly awaken and go, oh my goodness, we're like 85% small churches. Um, and over 50% of PCOSA congregations are rural. How did that happen? I don't know that that's going to really happen. Um, I think we need to stay connected to each other as best as we can amidst these cultural pressures that are continuing to try to pull us apart. Um, I know in our presbytery, the challenges are how do you, and this is not just our presbytery, the challenges are how do you provide pastoral leadership for small congregations? Because even our small congregations that can pay $10,000 or $15,000 over Presbyterian minimum in a beautiful place can't get candidates to interview with. And so
Is that more candidate interest, or is it other resource dynamics?
it's certainly candidate interest, and smaller numbers in seminaries, of course, and folks that are going to seminary almost totally come out of large programmatic churches, in either suburban or urban areas. So, you know, our little part of the world isn't even a possibility. Um, and so, I mean, that's just changes in culture that we just have to adapt to. Um, and well, I mean, even in the 17 years I've been here, there was always a steady flow right out of my seminary, which is in Richmond Union Seminary,
Yeah.
steady flow to our presbytery of folks right out of seminary. And that's not happened in years at this point. There's just different interests that are going on in seminary. Think congregational ministry in a small town or rural setting.
Or congregational ministry, period, I think in many instances,
Right.
where that's become peripheral to what is viewed as the function of a seminary. It's not necessarily preparing people for the pastorate. That seems to have transitioned even, I mean, it's been decades now, but it feels like it's less of an emphasis. Um, and so how within your presbytery, within the little churches, how's that how's that being filled? I mean, there's certainly you can go through this certified lay track, but how are pulpits being filled? How are people being fed?
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly our commission ruling elder school is a vital part of providing pastoral leadership. Our committee on ministry has gotten wildly adaptable, which I'm all for. And it's been interesting to see how fast the change has happened in just the last, really since the pandemic. I think since the pandemic that really further pushed us to just say, hey, we cannot have the same expectations that we used to before we will allow somebody to serve a church. And for Virginia, um, that's a big change. When I was out west, those presbyteries have been much more flexible for generations. And so that's been helpful. What that means is we have folks that come in from different denominations to serve. One of the things um, that that I actually help us think about, because a number of my seminary friends who were Cumberland Presbyterians um, were looking to go PCUSA. their denomination amidst all these cultural pressures has become much more conservative, and they were feeling like they needed to go. And so we've had some Cumberlands come in to our Presbyterian, our COM, you know, didn't lose their minds over the fact that they didn't take Greek and Hebrew. Um, and
which I took Greek, I took Hebrew. To be honest, I think the mastery of that, um, if you apply it too often in sermons, you may or may not have people staying awake. So
true enough.
it's good
But
to
just
know.
those
It's
kinds of
good to know.
flexibilities.
Yeah.
Um, and we've had some Methodists, we've had Baptists, we've had and some of these folks have become really great pres presbytery contributors. So yeah, it's
So,
been a big change.
yeah. So openness to bringing the ruling elders in and engaging and finding whatever model works, and whoever feels called or drawn to the ministry being open to that, because that's certainly going to be necessary.
No
So,
doubt.
no doubt. Um, so other things that are of like on your mind at the moment as we look towards the future of our contracting denomination and a growing number of small churches existing.
Yeah, I mean this is not any new idea at all, but I just think that the kinds of places of growth and um, new ways of serving are come up from the ground, right? And are ones that are local. And I know when I went around to different presbyteries to talk after the book came out, I wish I would have figured out this phrase before I wrote the book and put it in the book. But um, folks are wanting to talk about um, experts, right? And having experts bring information to these poor small churches. And I realized the thing to say was the experts are local, the experts are already there, right? And so our role as pastors is to help them fulfill their callings, to say yes to them, right? To give them every confidence that God's calling on their life is genuine and valid. And so for the challenges into the future, I think the answer is the same for like our presbyteries. Um, the experts are there for figuring the way forward, and not so much the way that we used to think of these things. That was post World War II, right? Where the experts were um, these people that had sort of McDonald's solutions that you implement in every church that's the same sort of programmatic solution. And so you had unified curriculums that you could do at a church in St. Louis or in New England, right? It's yeah, those kinds of large sweeping things are just they're not working, right? And so the look around you in your congregation. There are folks there that are the experts, and as we wrestle in our judicatories for how to respond, the folks are already there. Give them permission. Um,
And so much of that is, I mean, small congregations. I don't know if this is your experience. They are both very, very set in their ways, and they can change very quickly.
yeah,
They
yeah,
can, if an exigency arrives, something that needs to be dealt with, if you've got empowered leadership and empowered laity, they're going to figure out how to get that done. I mean, especially if you're in a community where you have to figure out how to get things done because every season's going to offer up a new and interesting challenge that you got to get through. Especially if you've got anyone in agriculture, that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
You've got to trust that they've got the wisdom, that they know the ground, they understand the place that they are, and that they've got space to try and they've got freedom to fail and learn and adapt and find their way to what they need to do. It's not always top down solutions don't work very well in tiny little communities. They really don't. So
For sure.
so looking forward, other things you've got going on. Are you doing any more writing or talking to folks on this?
I've really just sort of focused my writing to where I'm at
Yeah.
this point. Um, I write a weekly newsletter that I love to take a lot of time um, putting together, sermons, of course. And so I've just sort of been focused there. Um, I noticed when I was still writing regularly for different online magazines and stuff like that, that the online culture is so, so divided that when you share something into that world, the responses are just not so much conversations that I want to have.
Right.
Um, and so it's been a while since I've submitted anything um, for print, and just generating conversations in our presbytery has been enormously satisfying. Um, a number of years ago, I started a book group of clergy friends,
What
and
sort of things do you read?
um, we just read Theo of Golden.
I have
Um,
been hearing good things about it. Did you
oh, it was
like
so
it?
much fun. It was a good summer read, super fun, beautiful book. We reread them. Goodness gracious. We Our next book is this one's been around a while. The 100-Year-Old Man Who Jumped Out the Window, and I'm forgetting the exact name of that. It's sort of a Swedish Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Um, so we do a good bit of fiction. We've done um, a lot of goodness gracious, Ian Williams,
Okay.
um, West Ireland, Small Rural Ride, beautiful books. This is Happiness. Um, we do books that come out. We did Ryan Burge's new book,
Yeah.
um, and um, we do a lot of fiction. We do some reading in church. I think we sort of tired. We used to do some books on politics and just gotten weary of
It
that.
can be wearying. It's the
Um,
same slog year after year.
yeah.
Well, that sounds fun. Anything else life-giving going on for you in your ministry right now?
The people, right? The people and God
Yeah.
remain good.
They remain good. It's not a question of a new thing, it's a thing that continues.
Yeah.
Um, Closing words, anything you'd like to sort of wrap up with, words of wisdom? I think you've given us
Uh,
plenty.
yeah, no, appreciate this podcast. I think this is a great thing, and uh, I love hearing the conversations that you've had so far, and just hearing others tell their stories and their love of small places is super helpful. So I appreciate it, David.
Well, it's my pleasure doing it. I think the great fun in it is um, I feel that doing this is more like maybe my congregants are inspiring me, but the degree of love that they just pour into being the story of our church and living out that life just for the because it's good, because it's what God's calling them to do. Um, these stories are everywhere and they're so many souls who've been touched by small communities. And in the great din and light and brightness of the story of the big and the powerful and the strong, it's nice to capture some of the stiller, smaller voices, so to speak. So I've it's been a hoot, and I think the challenge is I have to remind myself I have other things to do. It's like I need to call this person, I need to do this thing, and just remembering that let it take time. If it's a good thing, you will do it and keep doing it because it's a blessing no matter when it's happening. So I'm glad you found it somewhat engaging. Um, well, we're getting close to an hour, so Steve, I think we're going to wrap things up. Um, been chatting with Steve Willis. His book, Imagining the Small Church, is well worth checking out. There'll be links in the transcript, which we are welcome to go to. But Steve, we've appreciated the time with you, and this has been the Tiny Gospel Radio Hour. Go and be blessed.